I used to do that too. Okay, so it's because when we speak and we have saliva. Because
no, I'm
sure.
good. Thank you so much.
Okay, carry on.
I'm saying we differ on this basic belief. I understand full and well that this is a very difficult idea to grasp. I don't understand it. I don't think it's meant to be understood by just talking with one another. I don't think I will understand it until I face God himself in heaven. I am agreeing with you. I am admitting that I am not able to explain to you with my words how God exists as three persons, one God. All I can say is that it is backed up by who he says he is, and it is backed up in how he has created us, because God, the Christian God, as what we believe, is a personal God. So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, always in community with each other because they are one being, three persons. We as people are created to be in community with one another, just as God is in community with himself. One being, three persons, one community. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I am admitting that I am lacking in my ability to explain and debate with you how God is somehow one being, three persons. I am still standing firm on the fact that I believe that, and I will not really be swayed by it.
Sure. It's not your lack of explanatory power or explanation to me on this concept. It's the concept itself is something that you cannot logically, coherently believe, of course you believe without it. You cannot be coherent in this belief system. I'll tell you why. Because if you went to a Christian, okay,
So
if you went to,
may I respond to that?
But before,
statement? May I respond real quick to that statement? Just get something on record, because I know you're taking record. I'm okay with that.
No.
The reason why it's incoherent and unable to be explained is because it's not a human concept. It's far, far, far beyond what humans can conceive. You would agree that we are limited in our mind and our ability to understand. We are inherently created limited. So why when we're talking about a being that is supernatural, so far beyond what we can ever hope to understand or be? How you doing? Sorry, I talked to him earlier this week. Why would we be able to somehow explain logically and with our words something that is so far beyond us? Like,
okay.
I'm understanding your issue with it. I'm saying that it's not supposed to be able to be easily communicated with our words.
Right. What I would like to say is this. This is something fundamental for our understanding of God.
Right.
Fundamental.
Right, and I'm agreeing with you.
God did not create us here and leave us alone without any guidance.
Of course not.
He communicated with us.
Right.
One of the essential part of communication is that the one who communicates and the one who receives communication and what's communicated, these three steps we need to understand first of all. If I want to communicate to you something, কেমন আছো ভাই ভালো? আপনার বাড়ি কোথায়? বুঝতে পারেন না আমি কি বলছি আপনাকে?
I do not understand.
ঠিক আছে আমি আপনাকে এই এখন যে ভাষায় কথা বলতেছি এই ভাষায় বলবো না, হ্যাঁ? Have I made myself clear?
No.
Right. So if I want to communicate to you something, I have to make sure my communication is understood by you, the recipient.
Right.
And I communicated, and I failed in communicating to you because you did not understand the communication.
Right.
When God communicates to us,
Okay.
you expect his communication to be understood. He's not going to communicate to us in a way that we misunderstand or understand anything. If the nature of God was like this Trinity, which you cannot understand whatsoever, why would God even communicate something that will be not understood by anyone?
So,
like for example, if you would not understand my communication, it will be unfair and unwise of me to communicate to you in a language that you would never understand, for example, right? So I would even stop from communicating to you in the very beginning because you would never understand this.
Okay.
If Trinity was a concept that is not understandable, it's incoherent, it's illogical, right? That's what the position of the church is throughout the centuries. It is a mystery. The word mystery is used to say you cannot explain it by logic or rationality.
Yeah.
Right. If this was the case, God shouldn't have even communicated about himself that he's a Trinitarian being. Why? Because it will be never understood. There are many things about God. Can I finish, my friend? Ryan, let me finish, Ryan. I will let you respond as time as you want. There are many things about this absolute God that we would not understand unless he reveals it to us in a way that we can understand it, right?
Right.
And do we really think God has explained to us about his absolute nature, all of it to us? We as infinite beings, we won't be able to fathom and understand and comprehend it. It goes by logic itself. The finite and infinite, how can the finite grasp the infinite in its entirety? Impossible.
Right.
So, if God is absolute, he is not going to tell you something and waste this communication when you can't even understand it. So, when you have this concept in your religion that he communicated something but no one understands it, you need to ask yourself, it doesn't make any sense that God would have communicated that he was a Trinitarian being when no one can understand it. It was a failure in communication.
Okay.
That's my first point. My second point is this. It is not that we don't understand it. We do. We clearly understand it. That Father is one God, the Son is one God, and the Holy Spirit is one God. So there's 1, 2, 3 gods. The problem arises when we say, but that's 3 gods, and you don't want to label yourself as a worshipper of 3 gods. You take offense. You say, no, I want to be a monotheist. That's the problem. So you try to say, no, that's not 3 gods, but 1 God. If you look at the Athanasian Creed, the creeds of the early Christians,
Yeah, 500 AD.
yeah, they tell you clearly, there are not 3 gods, but 1 God. Why did they stipulate that? Because common sense, rationality tells you each one of them is 1 God. 1 God, 1 God, and 1 God. But the next statement that there are not 3 gods, but 1 God is forced onto you. Why? Because you have to believe in by force, with no choice, no rationality, no reasoning whatsoever. That's why the church tells you it's a mystery, because you cannot fathom it through your coherent explanation. You can't even explain it coherently. If you were to only consider the Son of God in Trinitarian Christianity, he has no beginning means what? He exists by himself. He is not dependent on anyone for his existence. That's what it means, having no beginning. If I have no beginning, am I dependent on him for my existence? No. Am I dependent on God for my existence? No, because I exist without a beginning. If this was the case. But of course, for me, it's not the case. I'm fully dependent on God for my existence. If the Son of God has no beginning, he cannot be dependent on the Father or the Holy Spirit or anyone. That makes him independent God. So if the Son is an independent God and exists by himself without a beginning, he must be absolute in his own nature. Absolute. Meaning what? He has to be all knowledgeable. Not part-time, full-time. Because if you are all knowledgeable, it means what? You know the past, you know the present, you know the future, and you do not forget because you are all knowledgeable, perfect knowledge. But here is the major blunder in Christian theology. Let me tell you, major blunder in Christian theology. Jesus Christ himself said, of that hour and of that day, no one knows. Not even the angels in heaven, but only the Father. That means, at one point he's declaring, I do not have knowledge of something. If you have ignorance of something now, you could not have been all knowledgeable in the past.
No.
Because if you are all knowledgeable in the past, you will always be all knowledgeable. Imagine, I know your name and I know your name forever, I don't forget. Can I not know your name tomorrow?
If you choose to forget it.
How can I choose to go against my nature? Can God choose to go against his nature?
Of course, he's God.
Okay, so God is ever living. Can he stop living and be non-existent if he wanted to?
Why not?
Was he ever living to begin with?
Well, he was always living and he always will.
What does ever living, what does everlasting mean? Everlasting means he will have no end.
Okay.
If somebody you agree has no end,
Okay.
can they have an end?
If they're human, no.
No. Somebody, something, like God.
You're trying to ascribe
No,
limitations
not
to
limitation.
what God can do.
Perfection. If God is perfect, that he doesn't cease to exist at all, he's always going to exist. Ceasing to exist will be imperfection.
And it would
Being
be
ignorant,
against his character.
being ignorant will be imperfection. Imperfection. God is perfect. He always going to live. If he doesn't live and cease to exist, imperfection. Then he wasn't always everlasting in the begin with. You have to understand the principle of non-contradiction. If you affirm that someone is married, you cannot at the same time say he's a married bachelor. Can you have a married bachelor?
In human understanding, no.
No.
See,
In reason.
We are differing fundamentally here. You are saying that because God is this, he cannot choose this. But what I am saying is that God is beyond human understanding. Here, I know you're not a fan of Paul.
How do you know I'm not a fan of Paul? I may like Paul because I know he invented Christianity a lot. I give credit to Paul.
In Philippians 2, Paul is writing to the church of Philippi, and he says that Christ the Son chose to take on the form of man, chose to take on limitations so that we may be forgiven, so that he can live fully man and fully God and have the experience of being both at the same time. If we say that he was fully man and fully God, so he can also choose to limit his own divinity. It is still his divinity. He is in full control as fully God. He is in full control of how he uses it, where he uses it, and what it's used for. Christ, by Paul's logic, has limited his divinity in that instance in John to not knowing, being all-knowing, not being knowing, beginning, in, and everything in between. He chose to limit himself so that his grace and his power may abound after he was resurrected and after he was ascended. And so I understand where you're coming from. That verse is a hard thing for me to understand as well, but Paul in Philippians makes it clear that Christ chose to limit himself because he was humble, because he desired us to be saved, and that's the only way that it could have happened, and it could have been accessible for all people.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Does what I just say...
It makes sense that Paul wasn't very clever enough. I'm sorry to say that, okay? I apologize if you feel offended by that.
I would disagree with that. But.
Can you have this concept? The infinite becomes finite and remains infinite.
Yeah, because he's still in full control of his infinity.
No,
He is
you
choosing
cannot
to be
have
finite.
infinite becoming finite and still remain infinite.
Yeah, you can. But God can.
No. Conceptually, if you are 100% truthful in one matter, can you be 5% untruthful?
That's not the question.
Wait.
No, the question that you're asking me
Allow me to elaborate with examples. If you are 100% true in one instance, and in that instance, can you be 5% untrue? If you are 100% true.
No, of course not.
Why not?
Because the truth is it's like an undeniable question. You're either true or you're a liar. It's
When you say 100% true means how many percent untrue?
zero.
0%. If God is 100% absolutely knowledgeable, how much percent ignorant is he? 0%. 0. If God is all knowledgeable, means 100% knowledgeable. If he's 100% knowledgeable, how many percent ignorant is he? 0%. So Christ cannot be 0%, 1%, 5% ignorant. When he says, I don't know, that's ignorance of something. But he cannot be ignorant of anything if he was unknowledgeable. Do you get that?
Yeah.
Good. So when Philippians 2 says he humbled himself, made himself nothing,
Yeah.
that's where the problem is. That's an incoherent, irrational, illogical statement. Why? If you are all knowledgeable to begin with, you cannot then be less than knowledgeable.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you say, I want to humble myself. It cannot. If you are 100% loving, how much of hating are you? 0%. That's what 100% means. Full means none of the other. If God is everlasting with no end, means what? There is zero chance that he will cease to exist. Zero chance. If God is all knowledgeable today, tomorrow, all the time, zero chance that he will be ignorant tomorrow or later. That's what it means by all knowledgeable, absolute perfection. Absolute perfection means 100% perfection. If you believe God is fully perfect, that means that's 100% entirely. That's why you have Jesus will become absolutely one God, Father is one God, and likewise it will be Holy Spirit one God. The question then now would be, how does this three God become one God? If the Son, before he came to this earth, remember Philippians say what? He humbled himself. Before he humbled himself, he was fully knowledgeable, fully divine, right? Good. Imagine now, okay, I'm the Son and you're the Father in this belief system, just to make it easier. You're knowledgeable, I'm all knowledgeable. Now, you have entrusted me to create the world, right? That's what you believe in, that Jesus created, the Word created.
Yeah,
good. Now, I want to create something, but I want to keep it secret from you. Can I do that as a Son of God?
Absolutely.
And I'm all powerful. I should be able to keep it secret.
Because they're one being.
No, they're not the same though.
They're one
no.
being. They're
Hang on.
with one thing.
Look. If I have no beginning, let's really think about it. If I have no beginning as a Son of God,
yeah,
I am not dependent on you, am I? I did not begin to exist because of you. Because I am eternal with no beginning. So because I am eternal with no beginning, I am totally independent. Because I'm totally independent, I have a plan. I want to create something over there. I want to keep it secret from you. Can I do that? I should be able to, because I am absolute. You're saying I can't. Then I am not absolute. Then I am not absolute, you're telling me.
Well, I know, but we're circling back to
not circling.
We're circling
no,
back to
tell
the
me,
argument that we
tell me, Ryan, why am I not able to keep my plan secret from you?
Because the three persons, we're circling back to the same argument in that we are fundamentally differing on how God can exist in three persons and one being. You're saying that it's impossible for the Son, or it's possible for the Son to hide from the Father of something that He's created because they are independent of each other. I'm saying that they're not. I'm saying that they're three persons, one being, one purpose in creating all of creation is to glorify them. The Godhead is the theological term. And so I have had I'm going to wrap it up here because my group actually has to leave pretty soon.
Sure.
But I've really appreciated this conversation. I think where you and I are fundamentally disagreeing is the Trinity, obviously, because it's Allah is one.
Is it because it makes sense we disagree, or because it doesn't make sense we disagree?
It's because I don't think that God ever intended it for it to make sense to finite
we talked about
and limited beings.
God's communication, whether God would make His communication sensible or not.
I don't think that God making something a mystery makes Him unjust.
About Himself. Are you saying the very fundamental